Hello again. I am Bernie Norcott-Mahany. I work at the Blueford branch of the Kansas City Public Library, and I also teach at Johnson County Community College. In the course of April, which is National Poetry Month, I am taking time to read, or in a couple of cases, recite from memory some poems. All the poems that I'm doing are in the public domain, and if you decide to do something on YouTube, you may want to check copyright, because unattributed works, or even attributed works where you could not get copyright permission, can get you into some trouble. So these are all older poems, and there's a drawback to that, because I think there's a lot of great modern poets. In fact, most of my favorite poets are poets who really sort of kick into high gear after the 20s. So E. Cummings, William Carlos Williams, Gwendolyn Brooks would be another such poet, and even contemporary poets like Seamus Heaney. All of those guys, they're all under copyright, and so if you use this stuff, you need to make sure you get copyright permission from them. So today's poem is a poem by Edgar Lee Masters. Edgar Lee Masters is famous primarily for one anthology that was called the Spoon River Anthology. It is set in a fictional town on the Spoon River, which is a real river. It's a tributary of the Illinois River, and it runs in western Illinois. And Masters himself lived in a town on the Spoon River. The poetic device that Masters uses in this anthology, and these poems were written individually and published, in newspapers and magazines, and then they were collected. The opening poem, which was written for the collection, imagines that we are on the outskirts of Spoon River, on a hill in a graveyard, and that we look upon the graves of various citizens of Spoon River, and that these citizens then come alive, or their ghosts come forth, and then speak their story. So, except for the first poem, the other poems in the Spoon River Anthology are named for the speaker. So this poem that I'm going to read is a poem called Lucinda Matlock by Edgar Lee Masters from the Spoon River Anthology. I went to the dances at Chandlerville and played snap-out at Winchester. One time we changed partners, driving home in the moonlight of middle June, and then I found Davis. We were married and lived together for 70 years, enjoying, working, raising the 12 children, 8 of whom we lost ere I had reached the age of 60. I spun, I wove, I kept the house, I nursed the sick, I made the garden, and for holiday rambled over the fields where sang the larks. And by Spoon River, gathering many a shell and many a flower and medicinal weed, shouting to the wooded hills, singing to the green valleys. At 96, I had lived enough, that is all, and passed to a sweet repose. What is this I hear of sorrow and weariness, anger, discontent, and drooping hopes? Degenerate sons and daughters, life is too strong for you. It takes life to love life. So that was Lucinda Matlock by Edgar Lee Masters, and it's a striking poem. Right, this is delivered by someone who's died at the age of 96, who lived a life in some ways that might be seen as tough, but which she met head on, and actually sort of with a thankful heart, right, out gathering flowers and herbs and singing to the hills and that sort of thing. But she notices the current generation, the younger people, presumably when she was in her 80s and 90s, always moping and complaining and so forth. And so here we get this counter to that. It's rather nice, and that beautiful last line, it takes life to love life. That was Lucinda Matlock by Edgar Lee Masters from the Spoon River Anthology, and I will be back tomorrow with yet another poem.